Call the regular City Commission meeting of Tuesday, July 12th, 2016 to order. May we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hit the calendar behind your phone, like,
Oh, he's gone.
I think it's swiped it off.
It's stock quotes.
We have a commissioner joining us from Colorado.
Mile
Just because he can.
A mile high.
Scott, can you call the roll?
Commissioner Foreman,
Here.
Commissioner Krzyjak,
Here.
Commissioner Perry,
Here.
Commissioner Scott,
Here.
Mayor Metzger.
Here. Okay, first item is public discussion, items not on the agenda. Anybody have anything to bring forward? That's great, no environmental committee, no. All right, well, we'll move on to the next. We have presentations on the bus rapid transit and the RTA and the Coalition for Transit. So, I don't know, Jim, were you going to do the introduction of Tiffany and team, or
Sure.
it's up to you? I don't know.
No, I'm not. They can just go.
It's July.
Okay.
Tiffany,
Please, Tiffany, come.
please. Tiffany, we're not.
Hello, guys.
I just want you to know that we have a huge viewing on YouTube, and that a lot of people at home right now, either at the pool or they're glued to their TV.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
we may not be in numbers here, but we are listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
More to go to the audience.
Okay. All right. Do I have to get pretty close to this to be heard, or does it pick me up? All right, great. Well, thank you for allowing the RTA to come and make a presentation to you this evening. We are really excited. We're on a roll. I'm kind of corny now, guys. I do this like 4 times a day, so bear with me. And I did drop my jacket, but it's a little warm in here, so if you don't mind. Okay, perfect. So today what I'd like to do is just do a little bit of background. Oh, I left the clicker behind. You're right. Thank you. Talk a little bit about RTA background, how we are formed, a little bit about why we're different, and the problem that it is we're trying to solve in the region, and the plan itself. So we'll get into the plan. We have a presentation that we'll walk through today, and how that plan addresses those problems that we've identified in this region. So hopefully that will create kind of a good complement of what it is the RTA hopes to accomplish. We have a process that we're following for the last 1.5 years. We've been developing the master plan. We've had over 100 community meetings. We are now at the point of we've closed off the official community comment process, and we're taking all of that information, synthesizing the data, and adapting the plan as best as we can based on what we heard over the last month to address those concerns. Our board is set to look at those recommendations and those changes next Thursday, take action on the ballot language and the plan itself. Once that happens, then we anticipate we will be on the ballot in November, on November 8th of this year. The RTA is set up as an aggregate vote of all 4 counties for Washtenaw, Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb counties. And given that 50% plus 0.01 in all 4 counties constitutes a yes vote for the RTA. So a little bit about the RTA for those who may not be as familiar. Is that we were formed legislatively in December of 2012 with the purpose of coordinating the existing providers, AAATA in Ann Arbor, the RIDE, DDOT, the Detroit Department of Transportation, SMART, the People Mover, and we work in partnership with M1 Rail, which we will assume those assets over time in the plan. And historically, these agencies have functioned independently with their own governance structures, and they will continue to be able to function as the the transit agencies that they are. The RTA is an umbrella organization that seeks to coordinate those services, not to eliminate those services. Very much like the Sound Transit model you'll find in Seattle. The RTA also seeks to secure a long-term dedicated funding source. This is necessary because right now we found that there's over $1.5 billion in untapped and unavailable resources to this region in the form of New Start's federal dollars, where they come in and basically help to fund your capital investments over time. What they want to see is that you have a long-term financial commitment before they make that major infrastructure investment. And so, right now we have 4 years with SMART. The DDOT system runs off of the general fund, and AATA is also subject to every 4 years renewing their millage. What the RTA seeks to do is to make that long-term commitment and attract those funds to this region for the first time. So what's the difference? You guys have been around, and I know you've been doing the Woodward BRT project with us for a long time, and now you as well have been doing that. And we've seen a lot of plans. There's been 26 failed attempts. You heard it all before. So big whoop, you got a plan in front of me. What makes it different this time? And I like to answer that question because there's a couple of key elements that really give the RTA staff and its board confidence that we can get this accomplished this time around. And that is, one, the governance structure. We have all 4 counties represented in 5 member jurisdictions total. So it's 2 appointees from each of the counties in Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb that are appointed by the county executives. 2 members from the Washtenaw County area that are appointed by the Washtenaw County chairwoman of the Board of Commissioners, and 1 representative from the city of Detroit that's appointed by the mayor. Finally, we have a chair who does not have a vote that's appointed by the governor, who facilitates basically the board. And so that is a 10-member body, 9 of which have a vote. We've been meeting pretty much every month since March of 2013, moving this forward and trying to have the conversations necessary on how we work together now with the limited resources we have to get the best coordination possible. And it's a great group. I mean, we have a really committed board that's very involved. So that's our governance structure. The second thing is the plan itself. While a lot of people see the plan and they said, I've seen that before, what they don't see is that behind the scenes, this is the first fiscally constrained plan the region has seen. And what we did was we had convened a financial task force of members from the banking community and investment broker type folks that know a lot about municipal finance as well. And we had them scrub our assumptions. Is this something that you can buy into? I mean, we went deep into understanding property tax values and all those types of things to really know what the growth would be. And I'll tell you, we did a 20-year composite of the Case-Shiller Index for the Midwest, and we found, as much as we would like to see a lot more growth, we got to be really conservative and go with a really flat rate. So we want to know, they wanted to ensure that we could deliver the plan as proposed. And so we have a lot of conservative estimates that we truly do believe in. The second thing about the plan is that there is a provision in the RTA's enabling legislation that states that it's an 85% return on investment rule. This 85% return on investment rule states that every county, every member jurisdiction must receive back 85% of what it puts into the RTA from a financial perspective. So we took that, used the strictest interpretation of the law, cut the county borders, and looked inside of those county borders and said, from a transit capital investment and operations perspective, what are we putting back into those member jurisdictions? And we are meeting that requirement across the board. And if you look at it from just millage over millage, we get to 85%. If you look at it total expenditure over millage, we get to over 100% in all of our member jurisdictions. And that was no simple feat to do that. So we're really excited about the fact that we are meeting the requirements of the law with the plan that sits in front of you today. And finally, for the first time in this region, we have the opportunity to place a question on the ballot of funding for the region to consider. And the RTA is seeking a 1.2 property tax millage to support the plan that's before you today. So before we get into the elements of the plan, just want to talk a little bit about the problem that we're trying to solve. We know today that our investment in public transportation is $69 per capita. And that's only operating because we don't have any capital investment truly in this area right now outside of our buses. When we looked at our peer regions, we found that numbers vary somewhere between $140 per capita to $420 per capita. We are well below the mark. But I'll tell you, I was not raised to believe that just because somebody spends more, that you should also. So we had to really unpack that and say, well, what does that investment actually get us? Are we actually spending enough on public transportation? So let's look at the facts. Right now, we know 92% of the people in this region cannot get to work in under an hour. That's a lot of people that can't get to work in under an hour. We only have fixed route line haul services regional services going into the city of Detroit and out through the region, operating for 6 hours a day. That's 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the afternoon. And we all know that everyone doesn't work a 9 to 5. So we need to look at the span of service and understand that we need a longer hours of operation for truly regional service. Most of the lines that operate today end at 10 o'clock in the evening. Now, when I was much younger, I worked in a mall. And I worked that last shift, and what happens when you get off at 9 o'clock is then they tell you, go take out the garbage, go restock the shelves, and by the time you look up, it's 10:30, and there's no bus to get you home. So oftentimes you find that you get stranded. Our seniors and people with disabilities sometimes have to transfer at the city border, the city limit, to get to simply a doctor's appointment. And it doesn't happen for the majority of the time, but at the RTA, our philosophy is one time is too much, and we can solve that. And then our travel patterns in this region also prove that 67% of Detroiters leave Detroit every day to go work elsewhere within the region, and conversely, 72% of folks in Macomb, Oakland, and Washtenaw in western Wayne counties are coming either into the city of Detroit or traveling in between counties to go to work, and we don't have a public transportation system that supports those movements. So perhaps, just perhaps, $69 per capita is not sufficient to support our transportation network. So the plan. Let's see here, I've got this clicker in front of me. If we can get into, oh, thank you very much, the plan. What you're seeing here is the existing transit network. And you see kind of that yellowish area that surrounds, it's kind of bordered by 8 Mile and Telegraph Road. That's basically the borders of the city of Detroit. That's where the Detroit Department of Transportation functions. Outside of that, in Macomb, Oakland, and western Wayne counties, the lines that you see there, those dark gray lines, that's the SMART system. And then to your left there, you see Washtenaw County, and the Ann Arbor Area Transportation Authority exists there. While it appears that we have great coverage on the map, we suffer from low frequencies, disconnectedness, and low spans of service throughout the day, and we're trying to address those issues. The first layer of our plan really gets into the premium transit options, and the ones that folks are kind of excited about. And what we have here is bus rapid transit on Woodward Avenue, Gratiot, and Michigan Avenue, and Washtenaw Avenue out in Washtenaw County. For those who don't feel aren't as familiar with bus rapid transit, we explain it and define it pretty simply as light rail on wheels. It has all of the amenities of a light rail system, but underneath you don't have the rail infrastructure. So you can get a whole lot more mileage out of bus rapid transit than you can with light rail transit. It has dedicated guideways, signal preemption, so it doesn't necessarily have to stop for traffic signals along the route. It has well-appointed stations with advanced ticketing machines, real-time information, enclosed stations. It has those fancy articulated vehicles that have kind of that accordion section in the center that accommodate a lot of travelers, with those doors that open to the side, much like kind of the people mover, so you can walk on, roll on, hop onto the vehicle and make it very convenient. We looked at this and tried to figure out what the amenities were. This system would operate in the off-peak hours at a minimum of about 15 minutes every 15 minutes for a span of about 20 hours a day on these routes. So that's going on Woodward from Detroit to Pontiac, definitely passing by this beautiful neighborhood that we're in today in Pleasant Ridge, and then along Gratiot Avenue between Mount Clemens and Detroit. Another segment along Michigan Avenue from Detroit to the airport, and then the final segment going from Ypsilanti to Ann Arbor and Washtenaw County. The next piece of the premium transit layer that we have is regional rail. What you have in western Wayne is an area that doesn't have a whole lot of population or employment density, so you don't want to overserve it with 10-minute or 15-minute frequencies because it's not necessary in those areas. So what we did was we said, this Ann Arbor Detroit project that's been out there for a long time, the state has now purchased the line between Kalamazoo and Dearborn and have made major infrastructure improvements in this segment of the line, allowing us to do this at a really, really low cost when looking around the nation at other major commuter rail projects. So this would offer 8 round trips a day, a couple in the morning, midday, later in the day for after work, and then an evening cleanup train for folks that, work past 5 o'clock in the evening. It would have 5 stops in Ann Arbor, Ypsilanti, the city of Wayne, Dearborn, and the New Center area in Detroit. So it would connect up the Woodward BRT, the regional rail, and the M1 rail project, all at that hub pretty much at West Grand Boulevard and New Center area. So it's really neat what's planned at that location. The next layer of the plan, and the layer that the transit geeks get excited about, is the cross-county connectors. The cross-county connectors are, I have a pointer here, are attempts to solve this issue of disconnectivity and the east-west connectivity issue that we have in the region. So I'm going to take one route, for example, here. We've got the Grand River route that runs right along where that green pointer is. What happens today is between downtown Detroit and 8 Mile, the Detroit Department of Transportation offers services that run every 10 minutes in the peak hour and the rush hour and every 15 minutes in the non-rush hour. That is really kind of the gold standard where you don't have to look for a schedule to know when your vehicle's coming. But when you get just past 8 Mile, the SMART service picks up out to Wixom, and what you get is 30-minute service in the peak and 60-minute service in the off-peak. So you got 2 different operators on one route that if you get dropped off at 2 o'clock and you've just missed your bus, you got an hour-long wait at that location. The RTA said, well, what can we do to make that better, working in partnership with our providers? Because as I said before, they don't go away. We have to work in partnership with them to make the system rational. So what we're proposing to do is have an RTA-branded vehicle that operates the entire line, operated by either DDOT or SMART. We've divvied up the lines equally, that operates for 18 hours a day, the better frequencies of 10 minutes in the peak and 15 minutes in the off-peak, a 1-seat ride for customers for the full distance. And the RTA pays the incremental increase in costs for DDOT to offer that service between 8 Mile and Wixom. So that is the rationale behind the majority of the lines. So when you get to like the 9 Mile, 12 Mile, 15 Mile routes, you say, well, that's just SMART. That's not a combination or a shared. So what we did there was we said, okay, well, where the frequencies are too low, you have hour headways, let's try to figure out what the demand is there and get to 15 minutes in the peak and maybe 30 minutes in the off-peak, and on 9 Mile do even better and do 15 and 30. Okay, so we're increasing the frequencies in the span of service and paying for that additional requirement. And so this entire system of orange and red lines would be the RTA system. As the public would see it, it would have one face. So we're really excited about this particular feature of the plan. Yeah, I want to make sure he gets this picture before I move on. There you go. No, don't
If I may
apologize.
interrupt, are all of the red lines intended to go in place at the same time, or is it staged?
That is staged. One thing we are cognizant of is the federal funding flow isn't that reliable and that fast, that expedient. And the other thing is that, as part of MAP 21, the previous transportation authorization, and even now with the FAST Act, there is a program, they call it a program of interrelated projects, that no one has taken advantage of because most people kind of do this one line at a time. We're a little different in this region in the sense that we have to do it all at once. So one of the things that our team is looking at is packaging up, if I can go back, the premium transit projects that we expect to get some federal funding for and shipping them off to the federal government as one. So that way, if we begin to build the systems and they approve and we have a federal funding grant agreement, we may be able to accelerate some funds, do a little bit of bonding. We can start building like out here, down here, to try to avoid having people want to murder the RTA, trying to spread out the construction requirements so we start building in the system all at the same time. But we don't want to make promises that we can't keep. So right now, our first line, Woodward, would be coming on in 2022. So that's 6 years, within 6 years, but that's 3 years worth of construction. The next line would be Gratiot in 2023. And then the Michigan Avenue lines coming in by 2026. So it's a 10-year full build out of all the premium rapid transit options. And then if you look at the build out for the cross-county connectors, we're moving pretty quickly within the first couple of years to get those online. And in the interim, while we're working to build out the premium rapid transit options, we'd be running express services to try to mimic that, but it wouldn't be in its own dedicated lane, so it wouldn't work quite as quickly as we would like for it to operate. So,
Thank you.
oh, you're welcome. So the next line you see there, and that's kind of a lighter layer of teal dotted lines there, we're calling that Commuter Express. And one of the things that we want to start doing is looking at where there is no transit service, but there's major employment centers, where there is not an exceptional amount of density, but we definitely know there's a demand and there's a draw, and start to build that behavior to using public transportation. So along M59, let's see here. Along M59, you'd have a route going along Hall Road that touches down into the Somerset Mall and reaches all the way over to Pontiac. Along I-75, we'd be going from Great Lakes Crossing down through into the city of Detroit. And then you'd have two connectors from Western Wayne to Washtenaw County that run along the Canton and Plymouth lines and connect up into existing SMART service. And those would run to meet the demands of the work schedules for those major employment centers that are out there. For local service, I think we're all familiar with this opt-out provision that exists through Public Act 196 for SMART. And a lot of communities can say no thank you to public transportation. The RTA is all in together or all out together. So with that, there are going to be certain communities that need to have a linkage into the regional system, and that's what we're hoping to do. We worked with SMART very diligently to try to define our regional identity versus a local identity. And so you'll see lines going into Livonia, Rochester Hills, you got Northville touching here, and Canton, I believe, is kind of in this area. And so what we're proposing to do there is put in service that doesn't have the higher frequencies of 60-minute services, but it provides a lifeline into major employment centers and links into the more robust frequent network. And that allows those communities that if they begin to enjoy having these benefits, then they can start talking to SMART about opting in to have the local services to bring people in, and not necessarily having to have a parking ride to serve those, but instead having a local system that supports the regional system. The next layer of the plan is something that we've heard in the over 100 public meetings that we've had. Everybody wants this country. Absolutely right, Mr. Mayor. And this was surprising because I've been doing this for over a decade, and this is something that was a bit of a shock to me, that every single county that we talked to said they want to have an express route to the airport. And so what we're looking at in Ann Arbor right now, there's the Air Ride system. And Air Ride is basically an over-the-road coach, high back seats, luggage racks, Wi-Fi on the buses, bathrooms, that you can do some advanced reservations, get you right to the door of Detroit Metro Airport. That system has experienced such great success. They're actually at a 60 or 76% fare box recovery ratio right now, which on average in the nation, you get about 25–30% back on fare box recovery, but because of the premium nature of this service, folks are flocking to it. So we tried to mimic that service in other areas. So along I-275 out of 12 Oaks Mall, from the Troy Transit Center along M39, crossing over from Coolidge, basically going down Southfield Road. Another service coming out of downtown Detroit into the airport, and then from Lakeside Mall in Macomb County down into the airport via 94. How the system works is there's maybe 2 or 3 pickup locations in the community itself, and then it's a straight shot to the airport. And the schedules are synced up to the flight times, so that you're trying to bring people in to meet that particular demand for travel. And then last, we have the streetcar. It's set to open up in next year in 2017, and the assets, the capital improvements that have been made, will be donated to the RTA to take over operations in 2024, and it would connect up, as I said before, the Woodward BRT and the regional rail and create a hub there for us. The one thing that you can't see on the map and isn't difficult to, you can't map it because it's door-to-door service, are the paratransit and mobility management pieces of this. And when I start talking about these, there's two sides to this. One is the federally required ADA paratransit complimentary service, and that is everywhere you see a line on this map that we're providing service for, we're absolutely required to provide door-to-door service for seniors and people with disabilities within 3/4 of a mile for the entire span of service, no matter how long they're running. We got to cover that. Beyond that, you have the specialized transportation services. So, you know, like your community partnership programs, you see that smart bus that carries folks to Myers, and those types of systems that are a little more customized to the community. Because we have a lot of areas like the northern Macombs, northern Oaklands, and sort of the rural Washtenaw that have very low densities, we're looking at taking a lot of our funds to be able to create community programs that can pull them into the regional system or get them to doctor's appointments or to grocery stores within their community, because that's really critical and really key. Our system touches so many institutions of higher education and so many jobs. We're at 1.19 million jobs and over 23 colleges and universities in this plan. And so it really provides people access to opportunity for jobs and education, and as well as entertainment. And the other side of that is simplifying the services. In the SMART service system alone, there are over 160 specialized transportation providers that we know of today. That is a lot of options for people who don't have a lot of patience. So we need to simplify that. So one of the things that we've been talking about is creating a one-click, one-call center. So for our seniors who are more tech savvy, they can go online, say this is where I live, this is where I want to go. They can get a menu of services available to them, and then they can pick simply. And then for those who don't prefer to use any online services, they can just simply call and say, here's where I want to go, and get the same services provided to them. And then beyond that, and one of the things I did not talk about earlier is how do we make this simple for people? Mobility management. But we don't have a big appetite for public transportation in this region. We're very attached to our vehicles, and that's just the way it is right now. So we've got to help people understand how this could work. So we're looking at last 5 mile solutions, and working with Zipcars, bike sharing programs, the Ubers and Lyfts of the world and Splits of the world. How do those work in with the system? They were never meant to do long haul 27-mile distances, 30-mile distances. They really are circulator systems. And how do we work with them to make this happen? And also, where are the park and ride opportunities? Along this route, we actually have our team working on locating and creating a map of where proposed park and rides would be along the system. Because when you get off work and you still have to pick up your kids and you still have to go to the gym or go to the grocery store, you want to know that once I get out of off the transit vehicle, I can still have the ability to go and do that from this drop-off location. So we're really focused on that. And the third piece of that is making it simple. Right now, to use the public transportation system, you got to go through a couple of hoops to figure out how to buy the pass, when does the pass expire, and it's really subject to one magnetic strip card. And while our providers have been working together diligently to work on a coordinated fare system, this is the first step, is to get to one card for the entire system. But because we are behind the 8 ball on this, dramatically behind the 8 ball on this piece, we're also looking at the technology to get us to an open fare system. So your credit card, your debit card, your phone, whichever way you choose to pay for your ride, you can do it. And that's included in the cost of this plan. We've costed it out, and we know how to make that a reality and try to move it forward as quickly as possible. So that is the RTA plan in a nutshell, and I can definitely take your questions.
You didn't even say the 3 on it.
It's rapid. Oh, I did. Kurt, you got me. It's late. This is my 3rd one today, but this is, and I will make sure I clean that up. And this is what we are looking to create, and that is a rapid, reliable, regional transit system for Southeast Michigan. Thank you.
Questions for Tiffany? And we can take them from the front of the house or the back of the house too. So. I was impressed.
Can I ask you a question, Mr. Mayor, real quick?
Yes.
I've gone to meetings some time ago. Has the group gone through an FTA review already for the grant funding, the federal transit?
So actually my first month on the job, I got a call from the FTA about our triennial certification review on the grant funding that we've received to do the project planning that we have done. We have had our triennial certification review. I'm happy to report that we have come out unscathed. We had to make some corrections in terms of the public notice that we had for Title VI and a couple of adaptations to the DDE. And we're now actually working on the procurement policy for the next phase of the RTA. Given success in November, we're going to be doing a lot more contracting, and we want to beef up our policies to reflect that type of work.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Needless to say, it's exciting.
It really is.
Something we've been waiting for forever.
And we thank you for your support. We know how much you've all done to support this initiative and the public transportation in general.
Are there any other comments? No.
No, but thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you so
thank
much,
you.
Tiffany.
Thank you
Thank you,
all.
Tiffany.
Thank you so much.
Isn't it nice when they don't ask questions?
You were so clear.
Especially the third and
That
fourth.
was
You've gotten so good at the end of the day.
At the end of the day, I'm off.
And then, yep.
It's been a
Yes.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Kajal Rabani. So I work with the Michigan Environmental Council. So you asked if there were any environmental groups here. So I guess we've got
There you
one. So I'm here with a Coalition for Transit. So for those of you that may not know, a Coalition for Transit is a coalition of, our most recent number was 435 individuals and organizations that have signed on in support of regional transit. So we're a group that recognizes those problems that Tiffany talked about that we all know, the problems that we have in this region due to a lack of regional public transportation. So we recognize those issues, and we also believe that the Regional Master Transit Plan is a viable solution to a lot of those problems. So I want to talk to you all today because I know the City of Pleasant Ridge has been a big supporter of public transit and a plan. And also just to put a call out to anyone that might be interested in signing on to our coalition for saying that I as an individual or my business or organization approves of this plan and public transit and wants to sign on and support. Signing on just means putting your name on a public list of supporters, but there are also a lot of ways to get involved after that if you choose to do so. And also, if there were any organizations or any community groups that wanted a presentation, as Tiffany said, this is her third or fourth one today, the RTA board is stretched thin. So we like to help out and have our ACT Coalition members go out and do some presentations. So local Rotary clubs, Kiwanis groups, or also any senior organizations. We'd like to go out and get the word out some more. So I just wanted to let you all know about ACT. I'm going to give you all a business card.
Great.
And I don't know if there's any other way to get my information out if people are
What
interested.
is the website for ACT? that
ACT
people can
is
check
a
out?
coalitionfortransit.com.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, yeah, thank you.
And we do have, I'm going to read your resolution, and we are going to vote
Oh,
on that tonight. So,
Great, thank you very much. Would you?
just to show further support.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Could I email you the link to sign on? Would that be helpful?
Yeah, it's always, sure.
Yeah.
We could put it
Thank
into,
you.
We can put it on,
Sign on with it.
into the
we could
minutes.
I
put
can
it
give you an
into the
extra
minutes.
card.
There you go. We could put it
A couple
into the
of us are
minutes.
on
Okay.
the ACT
We're already there.
Yeah, yeah.
committee,
sign on
and
with
it,
you.
Yeah.
yes, and we'll make sure we share it with the community.
Okay, that would be great. All right, thank you. Is that your card?
Hmm?
Oh, is that your
Sure,
card? Then
why
I'll
not?
email that you have
There you go.
it. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I started to give it now too.
Oh.
She doesn't want that. So
Everybody.
I want to read a resolution in support of a coalition for transit that I'm going to ask for a vote. Whereas Southeast Michigan's regional public transit system is severely underfunded compared to the rest of the country and is one of the worst, may I emphasize worst, regional transit systems in the country. And whereas seniors and people with disabilities are underserved by an unreliable system that prevents them from safe and independent travel in the region. And whereas Southeast Michigan is failing to secure billions in potential economic benefit that studies show accompany regional transit investments. And whereas a large majority of jobs in the region are not readily accessible by regional transit. And whereas Southeast Michigan's 4 counties and 2 major population centers, Detroit and Ann Arbor, are not effectively connected by regional transit. And whereas younger generations continue to look outside of Southeast Michigan to relocate to regions with effective, reliable regional transit. And whereas regional transit must be strengthened and improved to make Southeast Michigan more competitive, which will help local communities attract more businesses and create local jobs. And whereas Southeast Michigan cannot expect to compete economically with other major metropolitan areas without a modern, effective, and reliable public transit system. Now therefore be it resolved, the City of Pleasant Ridge hereby expresses its support for a coalition for transit and the need for a modern, reliable regional transportation system that connects Southeast Michigan's 4 counties. We urge our residents to support ACT and commit to help solving the problem of unreliable public transportation in Southeast Michigan. I would like to ask for a vote.
Your Honor, I move that the resolution in support of a coalition for transit, or ACT, be approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Anything from you, Jay? Okay.
Oh, thank you.
May we have a vote?
Commissioner Perry,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Foreman,
Yes.
Commissioner Krzyjak,
Yes.
Mayor Metzger.
Yes, motion carries. Thanks to both of you. You don't have to stay if you don't want to. It's an exciting meeting.
Thank you very
But
much.
Thank
especially
you.
Tiffany, get some
Yeah,
rest.
Tiffany.
I'm sure you got to do it tomorrow morning. Start all
Yeah.
again.
All over.
Thanks so much for
Yeah,
coming,
thank
both
you
of
very
you.
much for your time, everyone.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye bye. Okay. The next item on the agenda is governmental reports. I think we have one. I guess this is it.
Nothing
Reed,
formal.
how are you?
Good, how are you, sir?
Good, thank you.
Chief I couldn't be here this evening, so he sent me in his place, mainly for on the consent agenda, the Clemis IT. I don't know if you want me to speak on that at all, but if so, I can do that now. But other than that, we're just rolling along and things are good. And here if you have any questions for us.
Did anybody want to ask about Clemis? Any issues around Clemis? Since it'll be part of the consent agenda we'll be voting on, so I'm sure everybody, we wouldn't want you not to be.
Pretty straightforward stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of need that to do basically
so.
probably about 95% of the stuff we do. So.
There's a lot of other IT associated with it, so. Okay. Everything else is good?
Everything's good.
Life is
Great.
good in Pleasant Ridge? It's
It
quiet.
is. It is. One thing I will say, the ID thefts are on the rise. I'm getting a lot of ID thefts. So if people are out there watching at home, get the ID theft protection. Keep running your credit report each year. We're getting a lot of them. People opening Comcast accounts in Pleasant Ridge residents' names in other cities. Credit cards, all kinds of stuff. So just keep a watch on that. But other than that, things are good.
Yes.
What is the main way that people seem to be having their identity stolen? Do you know?
That's our problem. It's hard to track down.
Okay.
You know, people are buying them online. We had one gentleman that his credit card information was compromised. I actually have the person charged right now. They're in the court process, but he bought it online for $5 worth of Bitcoin. So we don't know where the information got compromised originally, but it's out there. It's just floating around, and people will get it.
Okay.
There's a lot of ways online to hide yourself. I mean, Rob had talked about it in the past. It's crazy. You could pay for this stuff with Starbucks gift cards.
We have had some of the other calls in the town recently of people calling saying, you know, we get the ones from Microsoft pretty frequently, that the IRS is calling and you need to buy gift cards and send them to them. We get a few of those. So also, if you have any problems, questions, call us. Don't start buying iTunes gift cards and sending them to random people. So we can.
We had the IRS just the other day. It was
But
lovely.
that's about it. Just trying to keep things safe and keep people's identities safe. So
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
you're
Mr.
welcome.
Mayor,
Yes.
I have a quick question for the Sergeant. I know that Pleasant Ridge recently joined OCTAC,
Yes.
and we saw in the paper that there was an exercise that took place recently. I wonder if Pleasant Ridge had any involvement in that?
Not in the June or July outings, but we are scheduled to go in August. Chief Nowak and I will be going to the first first session, and all our other officers will be scheduled. I believe it's after Dream Cruise sometime. So, but all of our officers will be going through that training, so we're all set there.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Here, if I could.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thanks, Rob, for stepping in tonight for Chief. I'll just ask you, I saw something in the Ridger about a community watch event coming up in the fall. Is that something
In September.
that we can maybe give our residents a little heads up on? Or
Absolutely. I'm sure Chief Nowak will speak about it a little bit more next month.
Yeah.
But it is coming up in September. I don't have the date right with me. But we'll kind of do a review of crimes that have happened in the past year, what we can do to make ourselves safer, make our houses safer, things that we've seen, everything from identity theft to home invasion, anything that we can do to help. But yeah, we will be having a meeting sometime in September.
Yeah,
September
that's great.
21st.
September 21st.
September 21st, 6:30.
Okay. And will it'll be accompanied by a clever PowerPoint?
I don't know. Maybe.
They like your PowerPoint.
I think I will be there. I believe the chief will be there, and I think we're going to have some other officers integrated into that as well. So we'll see what we can do, though. I don't know if I can come up with something that is as good as the first one and second one.
We'll see.
The information
Tough
is the
act to
most
follow.
important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Mayor, if I could, just I wanted to say this, and I spoke to you earlier, Rob. I know this has been a very traumatic period of time in our nation as far as the relationship between police officers and the communities that they serve, and then the horrific events this past week in Dallas. And my feeling is, and I have a brother who's and a sister-in-law who are police officers, and breaks, it's heartbreaking. This period in time, because I know how hard the duties are, and I know what a special commitment that takes. Not to say that there's not things that could be done better, but and areas of improvement. I think a lot of you talk about national police organizations. And I know Chief Nowak is right on top of this. I know Jim has had discussions on this as far as community policing, community relationships, having our officers in the community. It's something that, to the pit of my heart, I wish we could share with the rest of the United States, because I feel our model here is the way it should be everywhere, and it's sad that it's not. So, I just, and I know it goes without saying, everybody in this room, everybody in this community, but on a day-to-day basis, we're very appreciative of the work that you do, and your colleagues on the Pleasant Ridge Police Department, and so thank you for that.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Anything else, gentlemen?
No, I think we're okay. Nothing?
Nothing?
You like
All right.
Thank you.
If you need anything, let me know.
Thank you.
Thank you
so much. Okay, City Commission liaison reports. We'll start with Commissioner Scott and Historical Commission.
That is a quiet one.
I know. in Lake Wobegon.
That's right.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay, that's right. You're on summer hiatus,
Exactly.
right? Commissioner Krzyjak, Recreation Commission.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. It's been a very exciting time with the Recreation Commission. We've had the shovels in the ground now at Gainsborough Park. You can really see the progress that's going on down there. Part of that progress is the installation of new playground equipment. Commissioner Perry and myself were fortunate enough to be part of a subcommittee that was reviewing options and equipment and catalogs, from landscape structures from the onset. It was really great to work with as far as bringing options to the table, catalogs, things that we could look through, and it was almost reminiscent of those Sears catalogs as a kid. You just, it's really hard not to circle everything, but over time we got to a place where I think the community is going to be really excited about the installation of this new equipment. We met yesterday and agreed on a recommendation which the Recreation Commission will be voting on. There's a special recreation meeting for July. We brought it up to the middle of July so we could vote on approval and get that process going as far as ordering equipment. I've asked Jim if he wouldn't mind to kind of go over where we're at right now as far as selections and timelines, if you could, Jim,
Sure.
on the playground.
Yep.
Thanks.
So we've been pretty busy today, redesigning the 5 to 12-year-old playground. I don't know how many emails have gone back and forth between Scott, myself, and Lance, and Living Lab, and our engineers to design this. But I need to go here. So this shows the 5 to 12-year-old playground, and there's a lot of line weights and colors on here, so I'll try to walk through it as best we can. But
Which one of those connects to the airport?
Well, you take the red lines at the airport, and then you connect to the green.
Okay.
That's good. That was good. So the green line is the original boundary of the playground as designed. The yellow line is the new curb boundary that's been field adjusted to save a tree. The red line pathway was the original pathway location. That was adjusted today and restaked in the field by the engineers to shift the pathway over so that we could get a new piece of equipment in, because you can see the safety zone encroached over the pathway. So in order to fit that in, we had to adjust the location of the pathway slightly to increase the size of the playground to meet all the safety zone requirements. So it's been a busy day. But just to run you through where we ended up with the 5 to 12-year-old playground equipment and what the recommendation that the Recreation Commission will be taking up tomorrow, the centerpiece of the 5 to 12-year-old playground is the EVOS play structure. And that looks something like this. Not exactly, I don't think our version may be exactly like this actually, but
Pretty close.
it's pretty close. So you've got a lot of arches. It's a climbing, kinetic-based piece of playground equipment. I think this is, what is this, Scott?
12 feet.
12 feet tall.
Yep. There's 12, 9.5, and 8-foot
Yeah.
arches.
So it's pretty big. That's the main piece. The thing that was driving all of the activity today was this new piece that actually Commissioner Kurziak brought to the subcommittee's attention, and everyone said, yeah, that's really great. So let's do it. So this was the late edition. It's called Global Motion. I think that Landscape Structures just released it 2 weeks ago. So we'll be the first playground in Michigan to have this piece. It's a 2-level climbing, spinning, ropes-based piece of equipment.
Craziness.
It's craziness, and I think that the kids are going to love it. So you can see that there's the second level that you can sit on the inside, you can climb on the outside, all while the thing is spinning around.
Insurance?
It is.
Gets hosed down every evening.
So, yeah.
Got a sprinkler system.
The kids will dig it, I think.
Yeah.
We also have a Mobius climber. This is a larger version of the small one that's on the 2 to 5-year-old playground. This is the 7-panel one. It's a little bit larger version. Lots of climbing opportunities there. So
About 8 foot high.
8 feet high.
Nice.
And so the Mobius climber, if I step back, this is the tunnel. You can see that there's going to be a hill. This is the 2 to 5-year-old playground right now. And that shade structure's here, and then the pathway goes back. So this is going to be a new pathway that connects the 2 playgrounds. There's going to be a hill with some boulder elements kind of as a retaining wall, and then a bridge and a tunnel that connects the 2 playgrounds. That provides both some definition between the 2 spaces, but then also a connection that the kids can play on. So they'll be climbing under this bridge tunnel element, and this is a port-in-place landing area that will match the port-in-place over here. So that's going to be a pretty cool element right in the neighborhood of this Mobius climber as well. There's also a Wii Saw that'll go down in the corner here. This is one of the more accessible play elements for children of all abilities. And so it's a modern take on the seesaw. Here we have swings. I think I need to say much more
How does that
about
work?
those. And then we have a boogie board element, and this is it looks like a boogie board. It's on some ropes, and it swings back and forth, and it's a softer surface that kids can sit on, hang out on, play on, stand on, climb on, push each other off of, whatever happens there. So those are the main highlights of the playground.
We got to Ridge.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. Stay tuned.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Cool. So yeah, that's the recommendation for the playground. So we stayed within the overall budget that was set for the project. We made some adjustments to the areas that'll be the poured in place surface. So it's not quite updated yet on this plan, just since this was pretty much hot off the presses at 4 o'clock today. But the poured in place surface will be here, and then there will be one pod of it that comes across half of the Weesaw and half of the swing, so that is an accessible surface that will get wheelchairs or really anybody to the Weesaw and the swings, which are some of the accessible play elements that we have. And then some of the poured in place will extend underneath the outside components of the central Evo structure. And it provides another play opportunity. You know, kids play hot lava and stuff on the surface and the wood chips when you have the combination playground. So we're saving some element of the poured in place, but the majority of this is going to be wood chips. And then the poured in place will provide access, and then it also provides some, design and visual continuity between the all poured in place 2 to 5 playground with some element of that over here. So it's functional, it's aesthetic, it's play opportunity. And we did reduce some of the poured in place surface to be able to afford the global motion, because the global motion is kind of awesome.
That does look,
yeah,
that looks good.
So that's the latest recommendation going to the Rec Commission tomorrow night again. So that meeting 7 o'clock at the recreation or at the community center.
Great.
Yes. Thank you, Jim.
Exciting.
And definitely want to include Scott in that, because I know he's worked really hard on that over several years. So appreciate that.
Quite a few years. Been
Yes.
thinking about this.
That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Great.
Can I do a couple things real quick?
Yeah.
Just some events. July
Sure.
20th, the Ice Cream Social. It's next
yeah.
week. It's at the pool since the construction of the park is under construction. We have a large water slide thing coming in for the grass area and some other things, and the pool will be open and ice cream. So make sure you come out to that.
Cool.
That'll be fun.
What time is it?
6 o'clock.
6?
6
Thanks.
on the 20th. Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
ask a question to Scott.
Yes.
I saw an update that went out to the camp families about the snack stand being open for
Yeah.
campers to use.
Mm-hmm.
Will that be open now for all people at the pool as well?
Yes, it is. It
It's
opened
open.
up this weekend for all use at the pool. So their hours are typically open up at 11 o'clock for the camp kids for lunch, except on Thursdays when they go on a trip, they'll be open at 1 for general swim times. And she's been open until today. She was there till 7 o'clock. It's really, the closing time depends on the crowd and the weather.
Right.
So, but it is open, yeah, with
All right,
pretty
thank you.
substantial menu of stuff. So.
There were a lot of happy faces when that opened, too. So, it's all good. Okay. Next, Commissioner Foreman on public schools. Got anything?
Yes, this is a very short one this month. There was no school board meeting in July. The next one will be August 15th at 7 p.m. at the high school. So that covers my report for tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And Commissioner Perry, Planning DDA.
Thank you, Mayor. The Planning Commission and DDA met on June 27th. The DDA discussed the program guides for the facade improvement grant for the commercial properties along Woodward. And so that's an exciting program that they're excited to start the grants back up, which has been off for a couple years. Also, the DDA reviewed the business district survey results. They had a strong response rate of 37%. There was a high overall satisfaction rate with the city response and services. And also, the highest priorities that were expressed were for infrastructure maintenance of sidewalks and streetscapes. So it's good because that's helping them determine where to focus their budgets. The biggest impediments, which we all pretty much know, are everyone's generally happy, but the lack of parking, and which is always one of our Pleasant Ridge issues, and then the Woodward design, because traffic moves so fast through the city. But you can see the full results in the June DDA packet. on the city website, and then you can look under meetings, and it's in their agenda packet. The next meeting for the DDA and Planning Commission will be on Monday, July 25th, 7 p.m. right here at City Hall. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions?
I should,
Yeah.
we may actually be canceling the planning commission meeting. We don't have any business items
Okay.
this month, and it's July, and it's always a difficult month to, get quorums, so
Cool.
maybe we'll have a meeting on the 25th.
So
Stay tuned.
perhaps, I'll let you know. Stay
It's
tuned.
possible. We know rec is tomorrow. We don't know about River Forest. Okay. Next item is the consent agenda. Sergeant Reed already mentioned the renewal of IT services Clemis agreement between the City of Pleasant Ridge and the County of Oakland. The other two items are approval of last month's minutes and the monthly disbursement reports. Do I have a motion to accept, approve the
Mr. Mayor, I
consent
move that
agenda?
the consent agenda be approved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. Can we have a vote, please?
Commissioner Foreman,
Yes.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Krzyjak,
Yes.
Commissioner Perry,
Yes.
Mayor Metzger.
Yes, motion carries. Next item is Gainsborough again, play structure relocation discussion. Jim?
Sure, thank you. Before I start, I should clarify why Commissioner Foreman is on my iPad tonight. There's actually an Attorney General's opinion from 1995 that allows for televised virtual presence at meetings, and FaceTime and Skype, since it's a televised virtual presence where the attending member can see and be seen. Apparently it's okay with Open Meetings Act. We checked with the City Attorney Mead on this beforehand. So
Okay.
if anyone's wondering why an iPad is making motions, it's it's above board apparently.
Okay.
So I was actually surprised. I always thought that it was not permissible for somebody to call into a meeting, but you learn something every day.
Technology.
And apparently there's bills that are introduced in the state legislature to clarify open meetings just for this type of technology that never really go anywhere. They're always trumped by something else.
Trumped.
Yeah, preempted by whatever the issue of the moment is that they're ramming through lame duck or roads or whatever.
Is there a limitation to the number of iPads that need?
Well,
Can we all just kind of?
that is a valid point, because it's less clear that somebody attending via virtual presence counts towards a quorum. So you have to have a quorum of actual bodies.
So
and
can
then,
he make a motion?
Yeah,
Okay.
they can participate, vote. Yes.
Interesting.
So that's why this is happening tonight.
Okay.
And so
We are on the cutting edge.
yes. So we did not clarify that earlier,
Once again.
and I'm sure there's probably some questions about what we're doing here. So that's what we are doing.
Thank Jim, Scott, and any other staff that helped to enable me to participate tonight. I really appreciate it.
Well, we're happy to see you.
Thank you.
That's what we're here for. Okay, so the old Gainsborough play structure, the one that everyone knows and loves, that is no longer located on site, due largely to Commissioner Krzyjak's Herculean efforts to take the thing out of the ground over the course of a weekend. Kind of amazing, really. But now we've got a play structure that's in pieces in the DPW yard, just waiting for something to happen with it. Commissioner Krzyjak, I think, has been championing this issue, and I think it's fair to say at your request, really, that this was on the agenda tonight, to consider what to do for reuse or potential future use of the Gainsborough play structure. Really, we've got three options. We can reuse it somewhere here in town. We can donate it for reuse somewhere else outside of town, or we can scrap and recycle. So the main considerations, I think, as we put kind of a base of understanding around the situation, the Gainsborough structure is 15 years old. We have a community center play structure at the park that's behind the pool, and the community center that's 17 years old. And these play structures have a typical lifespan of 25 years, maybe sometimes 20 years, maybe sometimes more than 25 years. But 25 years is pretty much the median there. So how did we get to the point where we are today? the Gainesboro Park design process has been going on for a year now. Really, it was about a year ago that we kicked off the 5-day charrette. That really kind of set the master plan and the vision for Gainesboro Park that still stands today. As part of that charrette, the design that was proposed and reviewed at the kind of summation event for the charrette, it required the removal of the existing Gainesboro structure to accommodate the pathway system, to accommodate the new playground in a way that really just flowed. So the City Commission reviewed that. There was a Recreation Commission prioritization meeting. Those were in August of last year. The City Commission went through a number of prioritization meetings last year. And this item was, I think, debated in some, really to a great extent, whether we should alter the plans to keep the old Gainesboro play structure or continue as was proposed out of the charrette last July to remove the existing or the old Gainesboro play structure and put in new play equipment there. So we stayed the course with the original plan, and the Gainesboro structure was slated to be demolished by the construction contractor. Commissioner Kurziak stepped in and removed it piece by piece, so now we have it, which could be reused. So when we look at, I think, Pleasant Ridge, it's also interesting to benchmark kind of where we stand. These are National Recreation and Park Association benchmarks for small cities, which are anything under 20,000 population. And where we stand is in Pleasant Ridge, we have one playground for every 842 residents, whereas the national, the national benchmark for small cities is one per 3,560 residents. Acres of park, we always fall down on this one just because we are a more urban community. When you talk about cities of 20,000 or more, that's a lot of independent small towns that have, out areas where you can have a big nature preserve that counts as a park. So our acres of park, we actually do pretty good for a city of our size in our location. And then operating expenditures per capita, I just found this interesting. We spent $221.30 per person, whereas the benchmark is $100.63. But when you're a town of 2,500 people who's decided to have your own pool, that tends to push those operating expenditures up a little bit. So really the next question is, the park behind the community center has been proposed as a location where the Gainesboro structure could be located. And the question is, can the community center park physically accommodate that old play structure? And the answer to that question, and these two maps down at the bottom are both 1 inch to 25 feet. So we're talking the exact same scale here. This is the community center park, so you've got the pool and the pump building and then the existing play area, the green field, the swings, and the volleyball court. And of course you have the old Gainesboro play structure area. So if you take it and just sort of spin it a little bit and then move it over. You see that, Rob?
That's pretty cool.
The Gainesboro structure does physically fit at the community center park, but the problem is that it completely chews up all of the open green space we have here. And I think Scott would tell you, and in fact I think there was on our recreation on the Pleasant Ridge Facebook page, we posted a bunch of pictures today of kids filling and running around in that whole green space at camp. This is an absolutely critical must-have green space area because it's really the best protected outdoor, open, unstructured play space for kids at camp, just in the park in general. So staff says that, our strong recommendation is that we have to preserve green space that's equivalent to what we have there today. We use it all the time. It's necessary. So the question then becomes, if the play structure is to be located at this park, it needs to either go here where the existing play equipment is, and I think that staff is comfortable in saying that this play structure is better than this play structure. So the question is, do we replace this play equipment with the old Gainesboro structure, or it's been suggested we could potentially push the Gainesboro structure over to where the volleyball courts are, but that would require removing the volleyball courts, and now we've got a play facility that we'd be taking away. And I think that warrants a lot of careful thought and consideration before we take a recreation opportunity away to accommodate a play structure where we already have a play structure. So these are kind of considerations that we see from the staff level, talking to Scott, just our conversations about kind of what makes sense for the space. So this is an important kind of thing to think about. How do we accommodate this play structure at the community center park in a way that balances all of the various needs and uses that we have for that space? Another consideration is we've talked about this is just a picture from today of some kids playing soccer out there. We've got some better ones. But the other question is, what's the long-term vision for the outdoor space at the community center? This was just some quick sketching I was doing with the
That's nice.
Yes,
that's the vision
but
I had.
This is, it doesn't look pretty, but this is the design process. This was actually a landscape architect that we have on retainer with the city is one of our on-call landscape architects. He's a professional friend of mine. I've worked with him forever. I respect him.
Is that what those are?
This is to give you some context. The wall goes the wrong way here. When you're sketching from memory, sometimes things are fuzzy. But this is the volleyball court. The wall actually goes like this. This is the edge of the community center building. This is the pool, the walkway that goes down to Woodside. This is somebody's house. So this is just some ideas. I think it's well established that this is going to be the next park in town that we really kind of focus on and try to improve once the Gainsborough project is well underway. And we have some time to think about it. So this is knowing that we're going to be doing work on this park in the future. I think we need to be cognizant of the fact that what we do today starts to set context or boundaries around what we might do in the future. So I would suggest that should we want to place the Gainsborough structure at the community center park, that before we do that, we really should, at a concept level at least, put together some space plans for what we can do with that area. And what you're seeing here is what we've talked about with the City Commission and Recreation Commission at various times is with the building, actually opening up this wall that faces the park so you can open up that side of the building with either sliding doors or an overhead door. You know, you've seen all of the ways that people make walls permeable at restaurants. And coming out to an outdoor space that's improved, like a patio or some kind of, way of taking this room and letting it spill to the outside, but also creating a nice outdoor gathering space, which could then lead into a green space that's usable for park, for camp activities. It's another layer that activities on the patio could spill over to. And then you might get to a play area, and then the volleyball court. And what is the right size and use for all of these various elements? So this was just some quick brainstorming over lunch. I bought my landscape architect friend lunch and picked his brain on this a little bit. This is just the beginning. I would want to really dive into depth and say that we should probably have some ideas for how the Gainsborough structure could fit into a longer term vision that made sense and that kind of was leading methodically to an outcome that we could move towards with purpose over time, rather than just kind of bouncing from opportunity to opportunity, which I don't think works as well. So other considerations real quick, our recreation portfolio, what's the play equipment that we already have? What are the play spaces we already have? On this side of town, you have Roosevelt, the playgrounds that are there that have playground equipment. Is that sort of doing the same function that the Gainsborough structure is? They might be. Do we need the Gainsborough structure? It's a question I think we should discuss. Cost. We have a cost estimate that was in the City Commission packets. That was for Game Time Structures, who did the original installation and provided this equipment in 2001. And I believe that they quoted $27,000 for them to professionally remove and reinstall the equipment. If we were to do a community build where we have residents or volunteer time to reinstall the structure, we anticipate we could probably get that cost down to about maybe $10,000, and that would cover the cost to buy wood chips to do the safety surfacing. We're going to have to put in the 12 inches of wood chips underneath this thing. It's a 50 by 70 foot area, so it's rather large. And then we want to have professional oversight for that reinstallation. I don't know what that would cost from Game Time, but if they had a representative or if somebody who could come out just to certify that the structure was installed properly, that it meets all safety codes, that we're completely covered from a liability standpoint, that we know that that structure's been installed to current standards. And quite honestly, a question I have is, what do we need to do and can we reinstall the structure? Because when it was put in place in 2001, it met all the standards then, so you're okay. But if we take it out of the ground and put it back in, we need to make sure that there aren't new safety requirements that we have to meet. So that's another question that we have to pursue with game time before we install it here. And then, what do we do with the existing community center structure? Is that coming out of the ground? You know, what do we do with that then? Are we removing that? Does that have to be demolished professionally? So that's another question I think we need to get our arms around. So decision points. What the recommended actions or recommended questions that staff would suggest the City Commission should consider on this item are, one, before we do anything, staff recommends we prepare a concept plan for the community center park space. We have, we can commission a concept plan at a very reasonable price just to get some ideas at this point. I don't think we need to come up with the plan, but I think to have some ideas to sort of start to crystallize our vision for that space would be necessary before we start putting anything in the ground. Staff, we strongly stand on the point that we have to preserve eco-grade or green open space there. It's used, we need it. Professional oversight for installation should be part of any kind of reinstallation, and that's just making sure we're covered from a liability standpoint. We need all the safety codes. We provide that compliance, safety, surfacing, and funding. We don't have money in the budget for this reinstallation. We got a big Gainsborough Park project, and $10,000 isn't a huge amount of money, but right now this year, every recreation dollar we have is really going towards the Gainsborough Park project. Future years, yeah, $10,000 might be an easy thing to do. We spend money every year on parks maintenance and upgrades, but this year we just don't have it in the budget, so we have to figure out where that funding comes from and how we handle that. I think before we plant anything in the ground. So that's just kind of an overview of what we see from a staff perspective for how we could make a successful reinstallation at the community center park. It can be done, but we see a lot of hurdles that we have to get over before I think we get to an optimal kind of solution for this if we're going to do it. And then again, you also have other options like donation or just, I don't think anyone wants to scrap a structure that has a lot of life left in it. But this is the inflection point. If this structure got much older, the safety codes change every year and get tougher every year, and as you get closer and closer to end of life of the structure, it starts to make less and less sense. So we're kind of at the point right now where it's the point of no return for putting this thing back in the ground if we're going to do it. So with that, I'd be happy answering questions. Scott can clarify anything that I've said that might warrant clarification, but of course Scott knows all about this stuff too, so direct any questions his way or mine. And with that, I'll turn it over to the Commission for discussion. And what we're asking for basically is just direction on what we should be doing with this to start to prepare for whatever path we're going to take with the structure.
Well, I think, personally, I would like to see, obviously the concept plan seems to be the most critical. Even if it's just a basic concept plan that we could start to then roll out maybe some more community input, that kind of thing, get a little more to really understand rather than just, the equipment, it's not specific about that equipment or anything else, but if we're going to be looking, that is definitely the next recreation space that we want to do, rather than throwing things in that we're going to have to throw out shortly thereafter and having people wonder why are we spending money that we're just going to eliminate. Right. I think it would be great to start visioning what we might be looking at to do there. So, and I presume we can store the pieces for a little bit longer. There's still plenty of room in the DPW.
We can move them inside, yes.
Yeah. I don't think they'll sell it through the
Ridge
resale yet, but there's always that.
There's always
get a piece of the historical commission. They want to.
Yes, that's an option.
Get a piece of the city.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I have a couple questions for Jim, if I could, and maybe Scott as well. First is, what are the age ranges for the two structures? I assume they're different. The red one versus the one from Gainsborough.
The age range for those
they're both 5 to 12 structures.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
The one that's at the community center right now has a lower deck for a transfer accessibility because it's a platform style. If somebody was in a wheelchair but still had mobility to walk upstairs, that's why the deck's a little bit lower there than the one at Gainsborough, which was a larger structure that didn't have that. It had the one lower deck at the one spot, but it was
Right.
still, it was right in that range. It wasn't
Great, okay.
quite as
And
low
then,
as the community center was.
How long before, Jim, how long before you think we could be able to significantly improve the space with the funds required to do that? You know, if we're going to develop a plan that has various elements with price tags attached, and we have a queue of items that we've accumulated at Gainsborough that we haven't been able to do yet due to phasing, how long reasonably do you think it would be before we could spend a large amount of money to improve that space behind the community center?
That's really a function of what the concept plan comes back with. You know, putting in a brick paver patio could be a $15,000 or $30,000 project. Opening up the wall from the room could be a $10,000 or a $20,000 project at the community center. And so those are things that, again, fall easily into our annual capital improvements budgets. And we have a lot of those similar level projects at Gainsborough. So it could very easily be where once we have the kind of the vision in place for the community center space, that, you know, we start to chunk out these projects and just like I said, methodically tackle them over time. We're never going to have a big pot of money like we do for the Gainsborough project. We're not going to have a big pot of money to throw whole cloth at a project for at least 10 years when the Parks and Rec millage is done. So however we do these projects is going to be, you know, on an incremental basis. And so what is the prioritization for what project we want to tackle? You know, some of the phase 2 Gainsborough projects could easily be shifted down the list in favor of a couple of these projects at the community center park. And you know, that's really just a question of what we want to do and how we want to spend our dollars. So I guess the short answer to that is that's really up to us once we get the vision in place and where we decide to spend our dollars.
Okay. And the last question I have is the plan that you mentioned developing, how would that be developed? Kind of similar to the way you developed the one that you drew up today or yesterday?
I think we do some concept ideas to just be more conversation starters. So we might just, you know, have a couple concept plans, and they'd be blobby. They wouldn't be real, you know, crystallized visions yet. They'd be, you know, kind of a refined version of blobs and space use. And then we figure out the process to discuss that. The Recreation Commission might vet it. You know, there certainly would be a public process element to this. But really the concept plan, just to have a couple of those in hand to get us started on the path to figuring out what it is we want to do. You know, this is not something we need to have a Gainsborough level, you know, 5-day design charrette for, because the space is much more, much smaller and much more focused already. So, you know, this is something that will involve the public in some capacity, but, you know, we'll start with the City Commission, the Rec Commission, just batting around some ideas, see if anything gets traction, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, so some of the ideas might have the play structure there and some might not, correct?
Could be, yeah. And it could just be that the play structure could occupy a space that we know later will be converted to something else when the structure gets to its end of life.
Got it. Okay, thanks very much.
The community center structure, the one that's back there now, is nearing end of life. 17 years. It's those pieces. The pieces they make now are much more UV resistant. The game time pieces, all the plastic and the painted poles are not as. You can see the deterioration starting to happen because of where it's placed in the sun, and it takes a beating back there. So I think that structure that's back there right now has a quicker end of life than what I hoped, especially for the use that it gets. It's not highly used. It is during camp and during the summer, but other than that, it's really not we're going to go to the community center park because of where it is, and you know it's used by people that are using the building and things like that. It's a different kind of space, but the open green space is critical back there, just because it's nice to have it, and we don't really have any other green space over there. Right.
Mr. Mayor. You know, and I think the plan is very much, you know, seeing what the plan is for the space, because, you know, I know we've sort of talked around it about it being sort of helping fill the community needs of gatherings and things like that and stuff. But what really spoke to me in some of the information we got from Jim and in talking to a couple residents is the whole play deficit question. Like, is this something we need? And that we have so many play facilities, because a couple things that aren't even on that list are also like Geary Park that I know a lot of residents go to, or you have Coolidge as well. And one of the concerns I got from a couple mothers was they're like, we don't need more playground structures. We need more kids at the playgrounds, because we take our kid there and no one else is there. And so that to me does not really say that we need to spread out our play opportunities more. It says that we probably have enough great playgrounds, and this space seems so precious. I mean, our space really is obviously limited, and this seems like it could be a great opportunity to really help expand some meeting and community type events.
Before the freeway went in, there was tennis courts there, a baseball field, large green space. We were probably at that 10.6 acres, and that was part of the original argument of the lawsuit with 696. You took away a ton of our park and recreation space. That affects, in the long run, it affects everybody's house value. So that was part of the original fight.
SCAF was tied to recreation.
That's why SCAF was tied to recreation, trying to get it to build it back up. Because if you look at old photos, there was a ton of space there. It's crazy to think that there was a baseball field and tennis courts and a lot of space there. So that goes way back, even before me, but historical perspective on it.
Well, and then sort of speaking to that, like your initial idea when you talked about taking out the playground was equipment that you wanted to donate it to a community. Well, that's what you told me, right?
That's what I told you when, in a meeting or in a private conversation?
In a private conversation.
Okay. Well, the motivation was always, and Jim can speak to this, I was sitting on Wellesley after work, being tired, knowing that bulldozers were assembling at Gainsborough Project, for the Gainsborough Project, very excited about what was going to happen, but also, understanding that the hours were remaining with, the Gainsborough play structure. Knowing that we had gone through a very involved process to determine the fate of that structure, I just was losing sleep. I was just like, this cannot be happening. So in the spirit of getting it out of the ground and having a conversation about what to do, including donation, which yes, is something that we've talked about, but also spending 5 days of my life and 15 residents, 14 other residents who participated in this project to help me, after making desperate phone calls, calling and, hey, can you show up with a shovel, please? People showed up, and people were willing, people were determined, and those balls of cement were ready to break a lot of determination. And what happened was the residents in the community decided it was something that they wanted to put the effort from. I was walking down the street, a gentleman on his porch, hey, where are you going? Oh, well, this is going on, and we're going to talk about, we're going to try and pull this play structure out of here. People just joining in. So it was very rewarding. Regardless of what happens here tonight or whatever the decision is, that was one of the most rewarding experiences of my time here in Pleasant Ridge, because to me, it exemplified everything I love about this community. Everything I treasure about this community is the residents coming together, seeing an area where they can make a difference, and, doing it. One thing we've always talked about, it's something we state, it's something that we talk about goals, and I wanted to talk about, supporting resident-driven initiatives. I mean, to me, this is something, yes, I'm on the city commission. There's sometimes, to be honest with you, I wish I wasn't on the city commission, because you know why? Because I think residents have the power in a lot of instances that the 5 of us up here just do not have. If I was a resident, which I am, who lived on Wellesley, and I saw what was about to happen, I would have done the same thing I did as a resident as I did as a city commissioner. So just distancing myself from, okay, I'm a city commissioner, but I'm also a resident who this space is very, very important to me. We all know the Wellesley, the Devonshire, the Amherst, these lots are very small. Gainsborough is our backyard practically. So this space means a lot to me. The equipment meant a lot to me. I knew after talking with Scott and Jim that we had not reached the lifespan of this very expensive play equipment. And after having those conversations in the meetings where we talked about, hey, are we going to keep this or we're not going to keep this? I was advocating for keeping it. That did not prevail. Okay, we're going forward. So now my thought is, okay, it's going away. I was thinking about it on vacation. I'm thinking about it. I called Jim, and I appreciate so much him even picking up the phone sometimes. And I really, confided in him, and I said, Jim, listen, I really can't stand to see this equipment go. And to his credit, he said to me, Jay, go for it. If you can get, we're not giving you any money, we're not giving you any equipment, we're not giving you anything. If you can get the support that you need to get that out of the ground, we'll store it and we'll have a conversation about what to do next. That was when I was having private conversations with you, Ann, about, yes, we could donate it, but I also always thought that this should be a first consideration. So, and the people who are out there for many hours, over 5 days, always the motivation was to preserve it for our kids to continue to use over the lifespan of its usefulness. Now, I'm all for donation. I was one of the things I've been most inspired by as a city commissioner was this book called Kaboom. And I passed it out. I passed it out to previous city managers. I gave it a copy to Jim. I mean, it's really inspired me, this idea of building playgrounds for kids to play. So kids can get outside, kids can play. Areas that are underserved, obviously, they have a strong need for play equipment. I want to support that in every way I can. I also want to ensure that the kids in this community have all the play options that they're entitled to just in nature of being a child. So when you talk about play deficits, I get that point. I really do. And we talked about programming. I agree with you 112%, and that's something that they talked about when Living Lab, and this is something that's going to be a challenge for all of us. Living Lab said, hey, listen, we could design the best, most spectacular public space that you've ever seen. You guys can pay for it, you can put it in the ground, but it doesn't have that participation, it doesn't have that programming, it doesn't inspire people to converge, then you're really not getting the impact of it. I want the same thing for the community center. To what Scott described, I've walked around that structure several times. I played with my children on that play structure several times. That play structure, 5 years maybe, that may be giving it some credit. I mean, it's really not in the best of shape. The one that we took out of Gainsborough is in much better shape. So for me, it just makes sense to try and maximize our usefulness of this investment that we made 15 years ago to say, okay, here we have one. We don't have the money to replace it. We're spending we're spending all our Gainsborough dollars in Gainsborough. If we substitute what we were able to remove for zero cost to the city, cost me a 2-day jackhammer rental from Home Depot, I mean, that was it. We pulled that out of the ground. So I'm very inspired by that, and I know the same kind of energy can be transferred into really rejuvenating that space, not just replacing. When we talk about designing the new space, I think that would be awesome. This would be an awesome opportunity to redesign that space in a way that considers our budget restrictions, but also considers what the community can do. Maybe we can talk to the garden club, and they can, there could be a new garden plot out there that could be intergenerational. So kids are now gardening with, members of the garden club. I know that's and they've done a great job. My kids are participating in their programs, bringing kids in the gardening. We could create some space back there for that. So rethinking that space, working with Shawnee, working with Scott to say, let's not just be an afterthought anymore. Let's really rejuvenate this space and energize it. I'm on board for all that. So when Jim was talking about redesigning it as part of this replacement, yes, certainly. I think that should be all part of it. So for me, I mean, it's something that obviously I feel very passionately about. I do want to see it, replaced in the city for our children to enjoy for 10 more years. The length of our millage is 10 more years. So when that millage expires, if it's something we want to consider as a community, reinvesting in that space, at least we've gotten 10 more years out of this investment that we made 15 years ago, and we're maximizing that investment. We're not just saying, well, it's about halfway done, we made some aesthetic decisions, let's pull it up and be done with it. No, this is an asset we already have, we already paid for. Let's rejuvenate that space with this play structure. So that was what was motivating me, and to be honest, this isn't something that, you know, I thought of even 2 months ago. I mean, I was just like really haunted by this idea of the bulldozers putting this in the ground. The guy who's operating the bulldozer said when he saw us out there, they're doing their daily walkthrough, he's like, man, I'm so glad you guys are doing this. I was gonna hate having to put my my bucket into this playground. I'm so glad you guys are doing that. Very well received by the professionals on site who were there when we were doing that. So for me, that's the motivating factor for this. I mean, I'm not asking the city for any money at all to do this. It's something that I believe can be funded through contributions. I don't know where those contributions are coming from. That's why I agree with some of the discussions we've had. That funding, that $10,000 must be identified beforehand. I'm totally on board with that. I don't want to put a half-built play structure behind the community center. So I really appreciate Jim, not only the conversation in the street on Wellesley, but also taking the time. I know this took time. I know Scott contributed to this conversation and dedicated his time. I'm very appreciative of that. And if I have to buy your friend lunch, I mean, if that's part of it, I will take him out to lunch too. I mean, I really don't want, I know there's no money for this, but I feel that with an energized effort that we could raise those funds. So I guess what I'm asking for is just the opportunity to pursue the course as Jim has laid out. I think it's reasonable, the expectations that he's made to ensure that the city is taking care of what they need to take care of. I'm a member of the city commission. I want all those I's dotted and T's crossed. The safety has to be an integral part of it. It can't be something where we're putting up a raggedy old play structure. It needs to be supervised. It needs to be authenticated. It needs to be professionally reviewed. I'm good with all those hurdles that we talked about. I think they're all sensible. They all should be met. And if they can't be met, then the project can't go forward. I'm totally cool with that. So that's all I'm asking today, is that we go forward with this project that Jim, to his credit, has laid out in his memo.
You're kind of asking for a lot, though, because that's land use in a place where we have very limited.
Mayor, if I may?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I've heard a recommendation. Do you have a recommendation, Jim?
Physically, the structure can fit back there, but my biggest recommendation is that we just know through studying it through the plan process that we know what we're doing, because the structure is very big. If you picture the volleyball court, it's almost twice the size of the volleyball court when you measure it out, 50 by 70. So it's going to take a little bit to get it fitting back there in a way that makes sense. So I think it's doable. My recommendation is, if the commission is interested in, if you think that it's a good idea, if you're interested in pursuing the idea of relocating it behind the community center, my recommendation is, okay, well then give us that direction and let us go flesh out how we actually accomplish that.
And what funds do you need to flesh that out?
We always have planning funds for planning or parks projects. We have professional services funds in the budget that every year we can use for these level of projects. So we've got the money. I think that coming up with the concept plans is something that we can easily accommodate in the city budget for this, with money we already had set aside for this very type of thing. And I'm wholly supportive of spending the money to do a concept plan for this space, because we know we have to do it eventually. So we can do it now.
But the reality is, if we were to really plan this out, we'd put in a piece of equipment comparable to what we put in at Gainsborough. Or not. So the question that I have is, if I think of cost per year and the remaining lifespan of this equipment, I'm wondering if we'd be better served to plan ahead for a new piece of equipment, rather than replace an aging piece of equipment with another aging piece of equipment that might buy us an extra year or 2 years.
And I you know, that is one of the considerations. If you were, and that's why I think, you know, the concept plan for this, and I might have 2 of our on-call designers, you know, just give both of them a little small, you know, this is a $700, you know, kind of engagement for the initial kind of concept planning for this. I might give it to 2 people to get 2 points of view on this space so that we can have, you know, multiple kind of options to look for, because one person can come up with multiple concept plans, but it's never, you don't get the range of vision you get from different people coming from different points of view. We might find that, you know, for that space back there, it wouldn't be as big of a platform based. You know, it might be more of a collection of components. You know, that fits together without the big central element, because that might fit that space better for the overall what we're doing. You know, Scott and I have talked about that. That might be one of the ways that it goes forward. And I've, you know, noodled on a napkin. But, you know, is that something that we could, you know, then we have to weigh, can we accommodate the Gainsborough structure maybe as a placeholder that we then 8 years take out and put the components in its place? And does that make sense with the greater vision? I don't have an answer for that right now, but there's a couple ways that we can approach this.
And to Brett, to your point, and Jim, I think as a placeholder, I think that really helps set our mind on it too. It's not something that, you know, I even recognize is going to be there in infinity. I mean, we're talking about 10 more years. It lines up very well with our millage. We don't have 10 years of recreation funding coming in, so that we can spend freely. So as a placeholder, and I know I think cost per year is a very you know, useful tool. If it's 0 cost to the city over 10 years of a potential use, to me that's pretty much the best cost per year you're going to get. Is the city has been asked to put 0 money out, but yet they've ensured that they're going to have 10 more years of life in a piece of equipment.
I guess my thinking is we are replacing one aging piece of equipment with another aging piece of equipment in a space where I haven't heard that there is an undersupply of equipment. Meaning the kids that are playing in the equipment are getting plenty of use out of it. Kids aren't waiting in line to play on what is there already. The larger piece of equipment would be nicer for the kids to play on, but they're getting use out of the piece of equipment that's there. If I heard that the one that's already there is likely to fall apart in 2 years and this one might last for 10 years, then that might be a different story.
I think
but
that's
I'm not
what
sure that
Scott's
I've heard
saying,
that.
though. I think that's what Scott said earlier.
It has less of a lifespan than what the Gainsborough structure had.
Yes.
Now, I've met with the game time guy out there. I've met with a Playground Safety Institute person out there. When you pull these out, it changes. Because not all the bolts are, some of the bolts need to be replaced and some of the footings change, things like that. And pieces are different. So that all changes. So I don't know what
And they can be improved. They can't just be replaced, they can be improved, which will expand the lifetime season more. So rusted bolts are replaced with fresh bolts, which over time increases the lifespan.
Let me ask this question. Is it possible to renew the piece of equipment that is there with new bolts, whatever is necessary to get some more life out of that, rather than take the piece that was in Gainsborough and move it to the rec center? If there are things that we need to do to make it last a little longer, rather than find another home for the Gainsborough piece here, that would make more sense. And I expect that it would be less costly to leave that piece in place rather than to have to go through all of the work of making this larger piece of equipment fit. Knowing that the long-term goal is to redesign the back end of the rec center anyway, at what time we can approve it.
But Commissioner Scott, if I could, you mentioned costly. I think we're talking about a zero-cost effort. If we could achieve that, there is no cost.
There's no such thing as zero cost. Someone has to pay. Whether it's residents or the city, someone pays.
Right, there's staff time.
I'm agreeing with Commissioner Krzyjak that it's good to have nice play equipment in the back of the rec center. I don't know what the answer is. And my question is, can we use the existing piece of play equipment, go through some of the exercise that we would do for the Gainsborough structure to make it good equipment, to extend its life far enough to get to something that we know we want eventually, which is to redesign the back side of the rec center. If we replace one for the other, I don't know that we've actually served the children any better or worse, because I don't have the sense that the play equipment is overrun by children today in the back of the rec center, with a few exceptions. You know, there are certain times of the year, certain days, maybe during the Easter egg hunt or whatever, where it's heavily used. And I welcome any feedback that tells me that my assumption is wrong, but that's my sense.
And that might be a better solution, just to make sure that that property is well maintained and preserved for whatever is left of its life, rather than move the Gainsborough piece to the other side of town and then dispose of that piece of equipment, which still has life. So I don't know that we're actually solving a problem by moving the Gainsborough equipment to the other side, unless I was told that we really do get another 7 years of life for any of these other things, and there's no other better cost-effective way to do it.
Respectfully, Commissioner Scott, I would say that, you know, moving something with a community build effort, something that we raise funds in the community, outside the community, donations, collaborations, that's something that the goal is to get to a zero expenditure for the city. And like we've talked about, I would not, and I've talked to other people, I would not authorize an expenditure on this project out of the city budget. And if it's going to be a point where Jim's staff time needs to be paid for, then I'll figure out how to compensate him. Because honestly, and those our conversation, our first conversation was, Jim, I don't want this to cost the city a dime.
You could compensate the city, but you can't
Right,
compensate.
it'll be put in a special fund.
Well, I'll buy him lunch. Or,
No, just
I
put
won't
it-
buy him lunch.
We'll
I
just-
wish Greg was here to rein me in here. But my point is that this is a zero cost per year, whether it's 7 years or 10 years. And respectfully, I would disagree. As somebody who's taken, I participated in the Roosevelt installation, which inspired me to say, regular folks, this was a community build at Roosevelt. The Ferndale School District decided to do their playground, a great opportunity for a community build. The community came out. Keller Williams was on site with a lot of their volunteers, regular people, realtors, residents, putting this playground together. It happened, and I saw it happen, and that said to me that it could be done. So when you're talking about
suggesting is,
when you're
why
can
couldn't
I
that
finish,
apply?
Brett,
Sure.
please? When you're talking about taking this current structure apart piece by piece, and then taking the components and updating them or refabricating them to expand the life of that equipment, to me, that just on its face seems like a greater expense than free. So, I mean, to me, I want to be cognizant of cost. My conversation immediately was about cost. I'm not being blasé about it or whatever. I'm thinking about cost, and that's why I really have this belief that with a community effort, something where we look to other communities, we look to, you know, the benefits, not even monetary benefits. Let's talk about residents working alongside each other for a common goal. My gosh, we talk about encouraging these resident initiatives. To me, this would be one of the, a really good example of that. So to me, this is an opportunity that even goes beyond the play equipment. It goes about speaking to who we are as a community. It goes to speaking to our emphasis on volunteerism. This is volunteerism in action. This isn't, something that we're just gonna allow the city to do. As residents, we understand the city is limited, and this is another part about citizenship. The city can only do so much. So having citizens come forward and say, I want to help my community. I want to help my city. I mean, you don't see that in other communities. People are talking about low taxes, low taxes. People in this community want to help their city. To me, this is exactly in that spirit. So to get tied up on green space, my kids were in those pictures today online. But you know what? They were in the pictures yesterday too with the bubble ball that was back behind the sand for the volleyball court. My kids are in that space right now during camp. I understand, and we talk about land use. And that's why I thought Jim came up with a very thoughtful solution about, okay, we have this aging play structure, we have this better play structure, we need to preserve green space. This is something that he talked about. So swapping the one play structure for another, to me that is an efficient use of land use.
If I may, just maybe 30 seconds. What I've heard, and I'm not disagreeing with what you've said, that it would be a great community exercise. All that I am suggesting is that same community exercise could be applied to the structure that's already there. I am personally against losing the green space, because I think space for all ages is as important as space for 5 to 12-year-olds. And I would hate to lose that green space that we use for lots of things in place of 2 large play structures. So if we're going to admittedly throw out one, dispose of one, choose your words, get rid of one, then which one should it be? And we have the option of using the Gainsborough structure, or refurbishing the one that is already in place, or doing neither and waiting until we can afford a new one. And any or all of those can involve the community. I am personally in favor of taking what is already there and refurbishing it and making it fit as it does today and making it good. It's unfortunate that the play structure that's in Gainsborough was designed and planned to be disposed of even a year ago, but that was the plan. That is the plan that we are working towards, and it doesn't ignore the fact that we have an opportunity that you've highlighted to make sure that the play structure behind the rec center is kept to a high enough standard for our children to use for the coming years. I would definitely be in support of that, wherever the funds come from.
Can I make just one quick comment?
Yeah.
Just on the side of some staff. In March, I had initial conversations with a company called Kids Around the World that remove these structures and take them other places. That conversation extended into April and to May. They were trying to get us on their schedule. They come and remove it, take it to other countries, and reinstall it. They were not able to get us onto our schedule by the time it was coming out. So there was a discussion to have that play structure removed and reused. It just did not work into this particular company's schedule, and they are the ones that do this. There's really very few other companies that do it. So
and it is worth saying that I think everyone agrees.
Staff did look into
Nobody wants to dispose of something that still has usability, and if we have an opportunity to find use for it, then that makes sense.
And in other communities around Metro Detroit too, that maybe have a much higher need for play equipment than we have.
One thing Commissioner Scott I would mention is, and I think Scott would have to back me up on this, is the two structures we're discussing are not at all comparable. We're talking about a very faded, of course, cosmetically it doesn't look great. Neither does the other, but one looks much worse cosmetically. But on the other hand, one is far smaller than the other and has far fewer play opportunities than the other. The Gainsborough one is much more significant in its size and scope than the one that's currently behind the community center. So when we say we refurbish one and it's the same as doing the other, it's not really the same at all. They're very different.
I would agree, and I would say that I'd say it was made that size because that is the space it was designed for.
Correct.
And
so when
if
we
I
talk about refurbishing one and then bringing in a different one, we're not really giving equal products there. We're refurbishing one and keeping this smaller one there and preserving it, yes. While currently we have something we paid for many years ago that has a much longer lifespan, and we maybe don't need to refurbish it as much, and it will give far more play value than the one that we would possibly be refurbishing in your scenario.
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, just to be clear, my perspective is I agree that we should have well-maintained play equipment behind the rec center.
Okay.
Whether that is Gainsborough equipment or the equipment that is already there is less significant to me. I don't have an emotional attachment to that particular play structure. I think it is necessary for the play structure to be well-maintained. And it may be a better solution for the city and for the children to take the piece of equipment that was designed for that space and make sure that it is well-maintained for whatever the rest of its life is. That is my perspective.
Whatever we feel right now, I think Jim initially suggested that a concept plan would be appropriate at this phase. So I think that's kind of where I'm landing on, is let's just see what the concept plans look like, work together on those things and come up with something, and then have a discussion about where we go.
I agree. However, I would say the concept plan is not likely something we can act on immediately because of available funding to the city, unless it's really low cost. The likelihood is it'll be chunks that get done. We'll still have that existing play equipment to maintain, and I am fully in support of maintaining whatever is there.
But Jim, you did mention we could have a placeholder, where this Gainsborough structure could potentially fill a space for this number of years until we have such funds to do this larger project, say at the end of the Recreation Village's term, or some other time we have a significant amount of money to do that, correct?
It can.
It could, yeah. So that's what I'm looking at, is just let's see these options.
So you're talking about having a design that incorporates the Gainsborough structure in place of the existing structure, that could be one of the components of part of a design. I also, and then we've got to stop, I know that we have questions from the audience. I'd also like, while Jim is coming up with this some design concept plans. I'd like to hear a fully fleshed out plan for raising money and getting volunteer. That's going to have to be very clearly laid out. This has to be a no cost to the city opportunity. I mean,
100%.
100% agree.
So we have to.
I would say it differently. I don't know that it has to even be no cost to the city for me. I am concerned that there is no plan. I am being asked to vote on something without a plan.
We're not,
Nobody
we're
being
not
asked
voting. This
to
is
vote.
there's no vote on this.
I know,
This
and
is
that's
just
what's
a,
concerning.
We're
however,
asking for
however,
some
the
guidance.
equipment came out of the ground and got put into storage without a plan, which set in place some motion. So that is my concern, and that's okay. We're there now. Now we need a plan in place, something that says what we're going to do next. Whether that's donate it to another organization, or repair the existing rec equipment, or whatever.
And Commissioner Scott, one thing I would say is, you know, we didn't have a plan for preserving that equipment. Shame on us. Commissioner Krzyzak stepped in and made sure it got saved at the last minute. I'm glad he did.
I would say not shame on us, because we had planned for at least a year to dispose of the equipment. So this is not a new story.
We planned to replace. I don't recall it. I remember Scott mentioning we would give it to welders to experiment on, and we never agreed to do that. That's the last I remember. So, you know, at this point, I don't want to go, I'm not going to say any more about that. I think I know where I would be comfortable, and it's with the concept plan phase that Jim initially described. And I don't know if we need to discuss further. But I don't, so I'll just listen.
Please, from the audience.
Yeah, hi, Tom Troiter, 11 Oakland Park. It's pretty clear, it's crystal clear, that Commissioner Krzyzak has a perspective that includes one direction. And I think we've heard about every imaginable argument that you can make in advocacy for your idea. Commissioner Scott seems to have a perspective that seems to be economically responsible and feasible, and even design-wise, I think having things in scale and having things in scale for space makes good sense. But it also seems to me that you have a few different conversations here, and it can't be driven by a thing. I think it has to be driven by a plan. And I agree that, in fact, the salvation of this structure was made without a plan, except the hope for being able to reinstall it somewhere within the city, because it was believed that it could be done. That's fine, it's admirable. But it can't be an end in itself, I don't think, because it's a lousy plan, and because we're talking about very limited space. And so I think Jim's idea of forwarding this notion of really coming up with a charrette among yourselves, and with the Recreation Commission. These people have an orientation for planning and have done, from everything I can see, yeoman's work, wonderful work. And their opinions should be listened to by all five of you closely. And if they say it's a go, then I think you ought to try to find a way to go. And if they say it's a no-go, you should probably find a way to just put this thing to rest and find the best second use that you can for this. But I trust those people. And I trust them because they have the best interest of the city at heart. Same as you do, but their perspective is different. There's a different sort of vestiture that I think junior commissioners have. And I think it's an insult to them that they haven't been brought in on the front end of this instead of being brought in on the back end. Because they're the ones that have the sort of the dedication and the resource. I know from my perspective of being a member of a junior commission, and I would feel badly if there was a major effort made on the part of the commissioner who was our liaison to just go off on her own. I won't mention any names, but and absent any input from us or any suggestion or any support. I mean, that's just not fair. And I think you've got to. I think you need to organize this much much better in order to go forward and then make a decision. But doing this without the benefit, I think, of the Recreation Commission would be a mistake, a big mistake.
Within the concept of the master plan?
Absolutely,
right.
absolutely.
Well,
They've been integral in all of this, and if there's a way, I think, of some of them may well advocate to your perspective, and if they do, then those are the ones that you hug and you move forward and you try to and you advocate for this. But I don't think anybody should be bullying their own will into this thing. That this is something which is in fact done in a way that is organized, and any planner would be happy to participate in.
And what I would suggest is we've had lots of opportunity over the last several years through the Recreation Master Plan, through the charrette process, ice cream socials, all the things that we have done to prioritize the work for all of the parks.
Well,
and what we decided was that Gainsborough Park would be our focus for the coming months.
Right.
And what has been identified is we might have an opportunity to do something different than we planned, which is perfectly fine.
Nothing wrong with that. That's right.
But as you suggest, there's a way to prioritize that work, to plan it out, to make sure that it happens in a responsible fashion. And maybe that's what we'll decide to do this evening, is to put it on the plan.
Right.
The
I rather like Scott's
that
notion too.
Work
that
started before any planning was done, and that is what has made this conversation.
And I think Scott's idea that, this notion where he tried getting it on a schedule so that it could be donated, and we might see pictures of other far less fortunate children, or in a community not nearly well endowed as we are. Imagine that.
Yes,
and playing on equipment that we were able to donate, and that would have been something too. I mean, that would have been. I mean, that's pretty great, and it really is. It would be in the spirit of Pleasant Ridge that we would actually reach out to, and so that can't be an option that is eliminated. I think if we still can find a way, if we don't have a purpose for it here, it does have some life. So let's also find a purpose for it. I think that's important. But thanks,
Thomas. If I may address the point, you just lectured me about process and not insulting, not bullying people, which frankly, I don't see this as insulting anyone. I take exception to that. I'm sorry. I don't see this as bullying anyone. I'm sorry. I don't see that as the case. And you just acknowledged that Scott, our recreation director, which is a very important position, should have made the decision independent of anybody to donate what was a city asset to this very worthwhile charity.
We discussed that.
It was never discussed as an option.
I'm stopping you right there, because that's not fair. We were looking into the option to bring to you.
Yes.
Okay. We would not have donated the structure without any kind of approval or discussion. We were simply looking into it and tracking it down. We do many things in preparation for meetings that never make it to the meeting because it doesn't pan out. That was one of them. And it absolutely would have come here for discussion.
Fine, but do I get to have...
Jay said, the welding company, that's what these guys do. They come and cut it off at the footings, they take it somewhere else, and they weld it back in. So it was discussed.
Yes.
So I take exception to that it was not discussed, because Jay just said it, a welding company, and that's what it was. So it was discussed.
Okay.
We talked last meeting about things that weren't discussed and were discussed. This one was. So
there's lots of exceptions to go along.
Yes, there are.
With Mr. Troiter comes up and says that I'm insulting the junior commission, I'm bullying people, and I see a lot of people nodding, shaking their heads. So, okay.
I think Commissioner Kurziak basically he took action to save an asset, and that's why we're having a conversation.
Jay, we have someone coming to the podium.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Betty Howe. I live at 31 Cambridge, and I have an old wives' tale to tell you. Maybe about a decade ago, it seemed that long ago anyway, I was on a junior commission, all right? And one of the things that came up was that it was the Planning Commission and ADA. And one of the things that came up was that one of the business owners wanted to get a liquor license for packaged liquor. And he happened to be out of the country. And so we couldn't have a public hearing that he could attend. And we were assured as a commission by the city manager, the then city manager, that that was okay because it wasn't going to come up anyway. And so we all agreed that we would put this aside for a month. The next night was the city commission meeting, and it was voted down. I quit at that point, okay? Certainly, the city manager knew that was going to be on the agenda. Now, I sit here all these years later, and the meeting I've been to this year, also another emotional thing going on. I mean, really, this is really emotional about this park, okay? And I thought one of the most intriguing things said here this evening was that there aren't that many kids that go to the parks anymore. I hope this isn't true, but it may be something to do with the demographics of who's moving to Pleasant Ridge, or that the kids go to a lot of different schools and they have other places that they do their recreation. But my final, if anything, recommendation would be, since it's going to keep on coming up, how many people are on this Recreation Commission?
9.
Okay, they should be here. Let them be here. And then have a give and take going back and forth with them. But I appreciate, I tried to give an example that was kind of purified, okay? I don't think it's a good idea to respond to a member of the audience. Jason, you know better. Thank you very much.
And Betty, I appreciate that.
I know
And
you do. Thank you.
I don't, Thomas and I,
Let's leave it then.
okay, I'll leave it at that. I would only say, to your point about junior commissions, this effort was not a referendum on how I feel about junior commissions. The recommended action that Jim proposed, which I feel is very reasonable, and these are the words, I'll just share them. Preparation of a concept plan to guide the location of the old Gainesboro structure to ensure a coherent future use of the space. Staff recommends that the Recreation Commission should either approve the concept plan or recommend approval of the City Commission as the City Commission desires. I have never at one point refuted or disputed or tried to eliminate that language from the conversation, so I don't know why I'm being accused of trying to circumvent the Junior Commission. It says right here in a recommendation that I've voiced my support for. I've voiced my support for inclusion of the recommended actions as Jim has laid them out.
I don't believe that I did accuse you of that. I didn't even think that. Okay. What I'm suggesting, though, instead is that we have the Junior Commission so that they make recommendations depending on their own charters. Okay. And so since we have people that should be involved in this and give their time and energy and community, big word here, then let's have them here when we're going to have hot button issues on discussion, okay? Okay?
I guess my frustration is I agree with you. I agree with Thomas. I agree with Ann and Brett's points on land use.
Mm-hmm.
I've agreed with everybody's positions.
Well,
so
what's the rush? The other thing I would remind you is someone who once made a living working in government, okay? It sounds to me like those of you who run for office to get here and then hire competent people to run the place for you may not understand that when the equipment wears out and falls apart, you may not even be here anymore, okay? So it's setting in place. I kind of hope that, you are. I think we're doing really well. But you're setting in place an agenda which can help in the future for future decisions, okay? No. And I will too. Thank you.
So Jim, you've laid out a way to go on this.
Yeah.
I mean, more or less.
More or less. I think that, first what you guys have to do is, as a group, do you want to pursue exploring the idea of relocating at the park? That's question number one.
Do you need a motion?
Yeah, we need a motion to direct staff. So that's number one. If you are interested in exploring the possibility of moving this play structure to the park, then I would suggest that the next step is let us go, let us get some designers working on this, let's get some options so that we can review those. So then at least we know, what it is that we're actually compromising on and that we're actually, working towards. The rest of this stuff, the discussion about where it goes and what that means for the space, that really comes next. We're speculating at this point. think we have
And we also have the funding question as well. That's an unknown.
Well,
So, Mr. Mayor,
Right.
I would have when you're ready for a motion, I would have one.
And what I would suggest that we all maybe agree on is that, you know what, if this structure is getting reinstalled in the park, I would suggest that we target spring 2017. Because to put it in this fall, to go through an actual robust process, to put, you know, so we can scenario game out how these improvements get made in the community center park space over time, depending on where the structure goes now and you know what things fall into place. Because we can put rough costs and we can come up with a game plan over the next 10 years for what our plan is to implement this. But we need to know, you know, what we're working towards first. And in order to go through the process, a robust process, an honest process, a good process, if we're rushing to get to an October install date for this, we're going to be rushing. So that would be my recommendation.
Let's rush to get Gainsborough done.
Right, and you know what? And that's the other thing. From our perspective, you know, we're dealing with Gainsborough stuff every day, all day, and we're stretched dealing with that. So I would just ask.
That's what we're looking.
I would ask that we all just kind of agree. Spring 2017, we can put the equipment in the pole barn over the winter. We'll get it out of the elements. But you know, if we go down this path of planning out the space,
and I'm going to alter that a little. I would like the Recreation Commission to tell me whether we need to move the equipment or not. I don't want to predispose the answer. I don't want to presume that the right answer is the Gainsborough equipment goes into the rec center. I would like to know what the right answer is. Maybe it's reconditioning the equipment that's already there. Maybe it's do nothing. Maybe it's let's save for a new piece of equipment. Whatever the answer is, I would like that to come through the right path. And if it means storing our existing equipment for a winter, and then that's what it is. That would be my preference.
So is this motion determining if we're putting the Gainsborough?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, this doesn't have.
My goal would be well-maintained equipment behind the rec center. Whatever that means is what it means. And if we can do it with what's there, if it means taking the better Gainsborough equipment over there, or if it means a community effort with community funding to do something else, fine. But we shouldn't just...
Based on that, let me sketch out, and Jay, you probably already got a motion ready, I think, but let me recommend what you might consider putting in a motion. That, to your point, Brett, you could recommend that we ask the Recreation Commission for their advice on this question of whether it should go in the community center space. And that's just simply advice, just polling them. And I would suggest that you also just, you know, kind of direct us to get these concept plans together. I can work with our designers on getting a few concept plans together that we can then reconvene, evaluate, figure out the process we go for from there. The Recreation Commission would absolutely be part of all of those discussions on the concept plans. I think those are the two key things right now. The funding aspect falls into place. You know, I think we know that the city is not going to be paying for this, that it's going to be a outside community funded effort somehow. So I would suggest that that doesn't need to be part of the motion. You know, I think that the champions of this project can work on that kind of parallel track to the rest of this discussion that goes on. So I think those are the key things right now. That would be one motion you could make. And if you vote on that and it passes and we do that, then great, that's our direction. If it fails and somebody makes a motion, you could then make a motion to pursue donation of the equipment instead. That could be the path we take. But that would be my suggestion, is, you know, kind of one of those two motions to direct us in our efforts moving forward.
And a comment I would make, if I could, and this is with reference to a comment that was made by a resident, I believe it was Ms. Howe, maybe Mr. Troyer, sorry, would be that perhaps we would want to, in asking for the advice as part of this process of asking the Recreation Commission for their advice, we might want to actually have just a joint workshop with them and have an actual two-way discussion with them about it. I think that would be a good idea. So I would include that in my motion, if we're ready for a motion.
If we believe it's coming back here anyway.
But I would like to have a two-way discussion with them face to face.
Yeah.
Just talk about this process is what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, Jay, you want to make a motion?
Yeah, so this might be a bit bumpy, but so Mayor, I would move to direct staff to pursue the development of a concept plan or plan options, and additionally pursue the advice of the Recreation Commission, including a joint City Commission, Recreation Commission workshop to investigate options for the play equipment behind the community center. I don't know if that adds up properly, so maybe you can read back what you captured from that.
Yeah, I have that. We direct staff to work on a concept plan for the rear of the community center, to ask the Recreation Commission on their advice on the play equipment that is back there, or whether the Gainsborough equipment gets moved back there, and to try to schedule a joint workshop to investigate those options with the Recreation Commission.
Yes, so if I could modify that a bit, make it so the workshop happens prior to the advice. Let's have a discussion first, and then we can maybe send them off to get together and discuss and come back to us with their advice. If there's a way to phrase that in like that.
Jim, you had some.
My biggest question with that motion and the Recreation Commission involvement was the timing of when that happened. So that clarifies what I wanted to clarify.
Okay. My one concern on that is that I don't want the Recreation Commission to come into a joint workshop blind on this. I wouldn't mind having some type of discussion with them first, so they can be educated on the process.
Well, they can watch the film.
I would further suggest that the Recreation Commission, we have a lot of parents. Their time is precious.
Yes.
And that is a group that is hard to get together. They've committed to their meeting a month.
Do they have an August meeting?
I would suggest that we schedule the workshop at a Recreation Commission meeting and the City Commission attend.
Yeah.
I think that would be a better way to go.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that,
perfect.
I don't know, they may not have an August meeting.
That's fine.
So it may be September.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
We are already.
Doesn't have to
September
be
works better
dealt
for
with in
us,
August.
no matter what.
Yeah,
And
so,
summer's over.
and again, that's why I recommend we target spring.
And you don't need us to decide to keep the equipment at the shelter for
No.
Okay.
Not a problem.
It can be an hour because it's been outside for 15 years.
That's true. It'll survive.
There you go.
So I'm sorry, Scott, if you wouldn't mind repeating what you have at this point, please.
Okay, so I have to direct staff to work on a concept plan for the back of the community center park, to involve the Recreation Commission on their advice about the play equipment that is back there or could possibly be moved back there, and to have a joint workshop to investigate those options with the City Commission.
Let's put the workshop before the advice, though.
Well,
So we can,
like I said, I need to have a discussion with the Recreation Commission first, so their advice isn't going to come out of that. But we will get that in the that would be the normal process.
Okay, perfect.
Right. So the motion has been made. Is there-
Second.
Is it second? Good. We have a vote.
Commissioner Foreman,
What about discussion? No, just kidding. Yeah.
Thank you. You better be.
Commissioner Scott,
Yes.
Commissioner Krzyjak,
Yes.
Commissioner Perry,
Yes.
Mayor Metzger.
Yes. Motion carries. Okay. City
wait, there's other
manager's
business.
report.
Let me try to remember.
Let's
What's your
let's
other
at least see
business?
Ridge Road again. That's all I'm asking.
Well, before we do Ridge, I just want to give a brief update on the Gainsborough Park construction, just generally. And oh look,
Oh.
should have had that up the whole time.
Twitch.
But these are just
Is it okay to leave the lights on? Can you still see?
What?
sure.
Can everyone still see if the lights are on?
These are a couple of just before and afters of the park. So, you know, this is the play space, what it looked like then, this is what it looks like now. The stakes you see in the background are the outlines of the new playground. So that's where that's going to be going in. Really, you can get a sense for what's happening. And you can see the pathways have been roughed in stone. One thing that Commissioner Foreman actually asked me to speak to is the width of the pathways through here. So generally the main spine pathway through the park is going to be 10 feet wide. So this is where the pathway comes through past the shelter. The shelter is kind of over here behind Scott's head. We've got the 2-5 playground and then the new 5-12 playground. This is the main pathway that's 10 feet wide. The reason for 10 feet is the design guidance The design guidance for two-way cycle tracks or two-way bike pathways is 12 feet wide, just to give enough clear space for two bikes to pass each other comfortably, particularly if you have two people riding abreast or something. You can go down as far as 8 feet in really constrained conditions, but we went with 10-foot wide pathways just to strike a balance between really the recommended design guidance and being sensitive to the fact that the park is actually fairly narrow and we don't want to chew up all the green space with pathway. Some of the secondary pathways, so this is the path that goes off. This is going to be a new irrigated green open lawn here, but this pathway that goes in the back is going to be 8 feet wide because it's an offshoot. So there are some sensitive choices that were made there to minimize the amount of asphalt asphalt and concrete that we're pouring. So anyways, that's where we're at there. So this is looking. You can see the shade structure for the 2-5 playground and the shelter building, and then that's what it looks like today. So really, it's the outlines, the broad strokes are coming into focus. They're going to be pouring concrete, probably some of the curbs and detail concrete work next week. So it'll really start to take shape. If you look in this area here, you'll be able to see the steps that they're going to be pouring next week. So it's going to start to come together quickly. We'll talk all about this. So the other thing I wanted to update on is you may have noticed the new stripes on Ridge Road. These are edge stripes, and the reason we did this was because Ridge Road is 26 feet wide, curb to curb. Those are 13-foot wide travel lanes, and when you're driving down an interstate freeway at 80 miles an hour, you're in a 12-foot wide travel lane. So very, very excessive curb to curb width out there. We really actually could accommodate a non-street parking lane on Ridge Road if we needed to. It's so wide. So these edge stripes are about 3 feet off the curb. What that does is gives you 2 10-foot wide travel lanes, which are very appropriate for a 25-mile-an-hour street. And they're just to visually narrow the street and to hopefully slow traffic down. We don't have enough width to create true sanctioned bike lanes here, but it does create some space that can help make some bicyclists feel safe riding on the street. You see the kid in the picture did not at this location. Anecdotally, I don't know if this is confirmation bias or not, but I think I've seen more people riding on the street, riding their bikes on Ridge.
I have no doubt.
Since these went in.
No doubt.
So, that's kind of the perception. And then, traffic calming is the other reason. And so, as you know, we have our stealth radar speed tracker. And so we have some before and after speed measurements we took at the same spot. The floors are from, from December 2014, but anyways, that was the last measurement.
It's working.
It's working.
That's
right. It is working.
I was actually shocked when I saw how much lower the speeds are. These are your speed distributions. So you can see that the average is up here at 30 and it's dropped down to 27. And as we've talked about many times, 5 miles an hour travel speed makes a huge difference in terms of injuries for a car on pedestrian. So every mile an hour is certainly counts, and we're clearly moving traffic down towards the speed limit here. Quantities. You see average weekday volumes are very similar, so that's good. The equipment is working the same as it was back then. That's one thing. But the average travel speed in November 2014 went from 28.5 miles an hour. We've gone down over nearly 3.5 miles an hour for average travel speed. Our average speed is at the speed limit now. So when you look at 82% of people were speeding before, now it's 57%. And people going over 30 miles an hour was 44%, and now it's down at 18%.
That's awesome.
And our 85th percentile speed, again, has dropped 2.5 miles an hour. So
that's great.
Amazing.
I've actually seen brake lights when 2 cars are going next to each other, because they say, "Oh, I'm pretty close to that car." It's really doing the job.
It creates a little more friction on the street, and I was shocked at how well it's working out there. And you might be asking, why do we do the edge stripes and not a center stripe? And they've done studies, and on very low volume streets, you get better traffic calming results by just doing the edge stripes, because the center stripe gives people confidence or a feeling that this is my space and I can do whatever I want now. But without that, then they feel like they have to kind of share space more. So it works sometimes. Other things that you'll see potentially in the next couple weeks, certainly sometime by the end of August, is we're going to be putting one of those permanent Your Speed radar speed limit signs on Ridge. It's going to be solar powered, so it's going to be facing southbound traffic. Southbound traffic is about 2/3 of traffic on Ridge, and northbound is about 1/3, and so you're going into the school zone when you're southbound. So we're going to put that up as well, and that's actually right in the same area where we've done the radar speed tests.
Where
so
is that?
That'll go up. It's about 100 feet south of Oakland Park, so it's in between Oakland Park and Hanover.
Okay, good. Thank you.
So that'll be going up in that location. We'll test it again and see if that has any further impact on travel speeds, but expect to see that. And I think, yeah, that's all I have.
Any word on or discussion on our portion of Main Street?
Yes, so we actually have a concept plan for a permanent change to the Woodward to Main Street bend. That particular section of street, and you may not believe this, but it only carries 13,000 cars a day coming off Woodward going to up Main to either go north into Royal Oak or to 696 east or westbound. There's about 6,000 cars a day on Woodward at Oakland Park and Sylvan, so 30,000 of those are going north. And of those 30,000 cars, 15,000 go down in the ditch, 3,000 stay up on the surface level of Woodward, and then the other 12 or 13,000 peel off onto Main Street. So we had a concept plan. We met with MDOT to narrow down that curve and just make some changes to hopefully slow some travel speeds, make it a little more calm and a little less violent coming around there. And also some changes to hopefully help our businesses make the on-street parking feel better all along Woodward. We had good discussion with MDOT. I was actually very happy with the discussion we had. We are going to be revising our concept plan and going back, but they're open to changes there. So it's a process. We'll be meeting with MDOT a few times, and we'll be going and discussing that with the Planning Commission when time comes for implementation, and we'll present it to the City Commission as well before we implement. So discussions are ongoing to implement those recommendations as well.
And also the service drive?
I don't know if we're going to do the
Still-
service drive
okay.
as a matter. People say paint's cheap, but
It isn't.
No, it's not. We know it's not.
There's only 1-2 companies that do it.
Right. Yeah. So paint is cheap when you're painting it on the ground to test something and then it goes away. But when you're doing MDOT spec
Right, when you're
permanent
doing
paint,
it, yeah.
it's a whole nother story. So making that crossing north and south across the service drive is definitely making that easier for pedestrians and bikes is definitely on our radar, and we're exploring ways of doing that. But I don't know where we are on that yet.
Any questions? Okay. Next item, other business. Other business.
Mayor, I have
Good.
one item.
One item.
I would just like to mention that the beautification committee has been out and about throughout the community, stalking homes, taking photos. We've had a couple of meetings, and we plan to announce the winners for this year at the September 13th City Commission meeting.
Okay. Great. How many winners this year? Do you know?
Undetermined.
Okay.
We know we'll have at least one business property and up to 4 residential.
Okay. Great. Commissioner Chris? Yeah.
Man, if I could, real quick, and I just want to put this in, maybe Scott or Jim could talk about it, but I know we were all invited as a city commission, and I feel like we should extend that invitation to residents of this community, is that on Monday, July 25th, at Roosevelt Elementary School, the school district will be dedicating their new playground. And for people who know back history, there was a tragedy many years ago at Roosevelt. This playground will be dedicated in that child's honor. So Blake has invited us, and I'd just like to extend that invitation to the rest of the community. It'll be Monday, July 25th at 7 o'clock at Roosevelt Park. It's very important. I wanted people to know that. But it also ties into our book club. Usually our book clubs are the last Monday, and we found a nice little nook in Hessel Park that we used last month, and so we wanted to replicate that again. But I didn't want to double book myself or the members of the people who show up at the book club to prevent them to have the opportunity to attend that playground dedication. So we're bumping it back a day. Tuesday, July 26th will be the next book club at 7 o'clock. And we'll be discussing the Arsenal of Democracy. It's something I know people in this region are fairly familiar with as far as manufacturing's role in World War II. This is a highly praised book. It's got a lot of great history in it, and that'll be part of our discussion for Tuesday, July 22nd at 7 o'clock at Hessel Park. So just wanted to let everybody know about that. That's all I have.
Good. Anybody else? All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Mayor, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Is that right?
Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Are you the driver?
Bye, Jay.
Well, that was fun. Bye, Jay.
Bye, Jay.
Bye, Jen.